Vasistha continued. One should not associate with another who derides and belittles this scripture, either through ignorance or through delusion. I think you have to expect such a response. But there's no point in being bothered by it. And also, there's no point in trying to convince anybody about this. They're either perceiving something in it and wish to pursue it, or is of no interest to them whatsoever, so we have to just let it go. I know what I am, and I know who you all are. I am but your own consciousness, seated here in order to instruct you. I am neither human, nor celestial, nor divine. I am here as the fruit of your merit. In fact, I am neither this nor the other. What we've got here is an opportunity. You can see it as the fruit of accrued merits, or just good fortune. It's an opportunity to be pursued. It's consciousness knocking at your door. It's your own awareness knocking at your door, directing you to who you really are. You have the option to pursue this. One should find here in this world the appropriate remedy for the illness known as samsara, the world illusion. The world illusion contains indicators of its own nature. It's rather like one of these adventure games where you go around picking up little tokens. You have to find these little tokens, and when you've accumulated enough tokens, a transformation occurs. Unless one cultivates a disinterest in the objective and material existence of this world, the belief or the notion of its existence cannot be weakened. And there's lots of ways of going about this. Cultivating a disinterest in the objective and material existence of this world. I think keeping track of developments in modern physics is quite a good way of doing this. But we also have to look closer to home within the nature of our own beliefs, notions, our moods. There is no other means to rid the self of its impurity or self-limitation. Whatever notions we have their uses, but they're ultimately limiting, and we have the option of going beyond them and getting in touch with our own essential nature as awareness. The only way is to weaken the vasana, or conditioning. This is a self-limitation. It's our psychological conditioning. It's our assumption in the belief of an external world. If the object does exist, then such a notion of its existence is natural. But it does not, though it seems to be in the absence of the light of inquiry. If something actually did exist, then it'd be fine to believe that it exists. But when you look into it, when you inquire into these things, existence becomes very tenuous and dreamlike in nature. The apparent world existence has no real cause. How can the effect of an unreality be other than unreal? How can a non-material cause bring about a material effect? How can matter arise in pure consciousness any more than a shadow exists in the sun? It is not correct to say that the world is a pure and accidental combination of atoms. They are inert substances. So if everything is consciousness, it doesn't make sense to say that matter arises in consciousness. Consciousness does not become matter. It becomes notions of matter. In the same way, it's quite common to believe that the world is a pure and accidental combination of atoms. They are inert substances, and this is what many people might subscribe to. We might think that this is the scientific way of looking at things, that the world is a lot of inert atoms, and that's it. This is what we might think of as a scientific point of view, although it's not really scientific at all, but a lot of people assume it is scientific. But even the understanding that somehow sentience is just a development of insentience is quite absurd. We're saying that the universe is insentient, it's inert, and yet this insentience gives rise to sentience. We are sentient. It's quite peculiar, isn't it? How we actually assign importance to this. We assign importance to the sentient, and we tend not to give much attention to the insentient, the universe. It's somehow seen as a bit inferior. Well, you might be able to accept that the insentient can give rise to the sentient, but it seems to me a rather absurd notion. Artificial intelligence, there's nothing wrong with that. We can clearly replicate intelligence, but we cannot replicate awareness. You're never going to get artificial awareness. Then you'll get people doubting that there's such a thing as awareness. Well, they're arguing for their own insentience in that case. In which case we might as well leave them to it, because they more or less are inert, because they're completely oblivious to their own nature, to their own awareness. It's a completely absurd point of view. And yet you get many intelligent people subscribing to it. The world creation is not the action of ignorance, but on the other hand, if it is the action of intelligence, why would an intelligent being indulge in such futile action, like a madman? So the world of creation is not the action of ignorance. It's the action of an intelligence. But this intelligence, there's no reason why any intelligence should give rise to the world. In other words, there's no reason for God to create the world. And when we look into the God-based religions and the reasons for why God created the world, they're not very convincing, are they? There's not really any convincing reason for why God created the world. He was lonely. The omnipotent creator is lonely. Or he wanted to be worshipped. He's so vain that he wants to be worshipped. This is the omnipotent creator. The reasons for God creating the world are absurd. There's no reason for God to create the world unless we've got a mad God.